So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex Gonzalez. I'm the Adobe specialist here at the U of A. And what we're going to do today is talk about Adobe InDesign. Who here has used InDesign before? You can unmute, you can chat, you can use the little emojis. One thumbs up, a little bit. That's good. That's great. Not yet. We're about to. I always love that. So hopefully you've got this resource page I've sent you. It's getting started with InDesign. And this page I'll put the recording right above the agenda here if you'd like to watch it again and have it as a reference. It also spells out everything that we talk about today. So if you feel like you need to take notes, the notes are here for you, but I won't stop you. So what we're going to do today is get to know InDesign at kind of a surface level. We're going to see a few things, but the goal of this short workshop, about 45, 50 minutes, is to demystify how to use InDesign and what it's for. So hopefully that sounds good. And then later on, I think April 21st, I was looking at a calendar, I'm going to do another workshop where we create something together in InDesign. So we're going to start a project from start to finish. So 2 different kinds of workshops, and you're invited to any and all of those, of course. All right, just letting someone else in here. There we go. All right, so we're not going to spend too much time on this website. There's some keyboard shortcuts spelled out for you. There's additional resources. And just to repeat myself, the recording will go here eventually. All right, let's go ahead and look at InDesign. And what InDesign is, in the short of it, it's a layout program. Oh, got someone else here. And what you use it for is to take your creations, your images, your copy, your illustrations, and assemble them all into some form of a publication. And it can handle media, different media, and different file formats better than what you might be able to do in Photoshop and Illustrator. And it's really meant to help you streamline combining text and 2D assets. And you can also make the web. So that's often a question people say, why would I use InDesign instead of Photoshop and instead of Illustrator? And the short of it is InDesign can do more, and it can do things more quickly and efficiently. But you could make the same thing in all 3 applications, but you wouldn't be using the best tool for the job. I hope that makes sense. So I made this beautiful intro image, just letting everybody know we'd start at 105, and it's just 2 text boxes and an image box. So I'm going to go ahead and close it, and we'll actually start with the files I've provided. A lot of these Adobe programs have really nice built-in learning. So if you ever want to learn more, just explore that Learn tab. It's under Learn, and it's also under Help and InDesign tutorials. So with InDesign, you can start from a blank project. That's most likely what you'll do. Today, we'll be opening existing files. But to start a new project, you can click the blue New File button. And here you can input the size. You can create multi-page documents very easily and purposefully, which is something you can't do in Photoshop and Illustrator. But you can also do single-page designs, and there's some common templates. So if you're making something that's a regular sheet of paper, legal, tabloid, or you can just enter your own and choose the units here. So let's go ahead and start by opening file 1. It says tour and zoom. And this is just a sample little booklet that was designed in InDesign. And what I want to do while we have this open is talk about our space and a few keyboard shortcuts that I like to use to navigate it. So on the left-hand side, we have our toolbar. And the most common tools you'll use are the selection tool, the type tool, and one of these frame or shape tools, which you'll see they kind of tend to overlap in their function. Towards the bottom, I actually need to, you can change your view options, and at the very bottom, I guess it's not letting me. I thought I could change it. Okay, so click and hold. Whoops. So if you click and hold, you can change your view of your project. So if you want to take a moment to see how it would look when it was actually a finished product and you don't see all the individual frames and markup around it, you can switch it from normal to preview, and you'll see a nice preview of your project instead. We're going to stay on normal view. The center is our work area, and it has the page itself where you are doing your layout and putting your text and graphics and other assets. And the space around it is also kind of similar to Illustrator, where you can have elements in design outside of that area and then bring it back in. Unlike Photoshop, if you drag something out of the canvas, it disappears. You can't see it. It's still there. But so that's something to consider, is that this whole area is your design space. So you don't have to just live inside that page while you're moving things around. While we're here, we're going to also talk about some keyboard shortcuts to zoom in and out and move around, which if you've used Photoshop or Illustrator, you might know these. It's to zoom in, it's Command or Control plus. Can you zoom? There we go. To zoom out, it's Command or Control minus. You can zoom out and see the individual pages. And to fit to screen, it's Command or Control 0. So you can zoom in and really inspect an element of your layout. While you're zoomed in closer, you can use like your trackpad or these scroll bars to move it around. But the next keyboard shortcut that I like to use is to hold spacebar to activate the hand tool. And what the hand tool does is it lets you pan around, and it shows up while you hold spacebar. So I'm holding spacebar, my mouse becomes a hand. I can click and drag around. So I can really get into this 5 days from and see what's going on. I can see each of these letters are their own objects, and so is the number 5. And that's where I can get in and really move things around. So it's good to be able to navigate your space, because you really want to get into the details when you're finishing your project up. So this is an example. We have a solid image behind. We have a PNG graphic that has an empty aspect to it. We have some text. And we also have text that has been converted into shapes. So you can kind of tear this around and see everything that's in there. If we go down to the next page, you can see how a more common layout would be seen, the use of type along with image frames and just a simple white background. This is a pretty common design in a magazine or web page. If you grab an image, you can see that depending on where you click, you'll be moving the image around inside the box. And this is my other favorite keyboard shortcut, Command or Control Z to undo. Or if you click in the right spot, you'll be moving the image box around, which is something that is a little different than what we're used to in other image applications. And then here we can see how they might do a full page bleed of an image and how they can bring in little design assets, giving within the same text box, giving the title text different formatting, and then the other text its own. And all the way to finish, where you can see some fun design choices that they made, where the text nowhere has a different opacity setting that allows that little silhouette to show through. The right-hand side of our workspace is our properties panel, and you're going to use this 90% of the time when you're trying to do something to your asset, be it text, image, illustration. So depending on where I click, my properties panel will show different adjustments and tools. That's where you might change the font. If you're on the image, you'll see options for aligning and for changing the way it fits inside the frame. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to play in the properties, a few of these tools, and kind of roll around and see what we find. Any questions so far? That's just the general area. You're welcome. If you open this file, you're welcome to close it now. We were just checking out a finished project. And just a friendly reminder as I'm going along, questions are welcome at any point. So don't feel like you have to wait. You can chat, you can unmute, and please don't be shy. All right, I'm going to open file 2, where we're going to talk about frames. And basically everything in layout lives inside of a frame, inside of a box or a shape. So before we look at the frames in here, let's just, in the space next to it, let's grab this first rectangle frame. And this rectangle frame is meant to say there will be an image here. Usually when you see a rectangle with an X through it, it's a placeholder for where you intend to have a picture. So if I wanted to have a picture here, but I'm not quite sure which one, I can still say, well, it's going to take up this much space and be over here, which aesthetically might not make sense, but that's okay. So these frames will hold graphics. Underneath the rectangle frame tool, well, you can also click and hold and choose different shapes, like there's the ellipse frame tool. So if I wanted to have a little circular graphic here, I could draw that out. If I hold shift, it will constrain proportions to be a perfect circle or a perfect square if I'm on the rectangle. So that's good to know. Go ahead and delete those. To switch between the tools, I pressed V to switch to the move tool or selection tool. And the frame tool is F, that makes sense. And the shape tool, the rectangle, is M. You might hear me call them the wrong name because they are the same icon, but in different applications are called different things. So I apologize for that. So the shape tool, the rectangle tool, is like a solid color kind of design element tool. But you can also, so if you draw out a rectangle, it doesn't have an X because you're not saying this is meant for an image. So on the right-hand side, under properties, you can choose a color fill. You can choose a stroke, which is a word for outline. If you click on the color, you can say no stroke if you don't want one. And you can even change the opacity, which is what's happening here. But this yellow box that I've made, at any point in time, I can change my mind and I can say, you are now a text box. And I can grab my type tool and click inside of it and start to type. And whatever I type will wrap inside of the box and go to the next line, right? I'm going to hit escape to commit that text. I'm going to Control Z to undo. It could also very quickly become an image box. So I could drag, do I have any pictures here? Maybe I have a picture. Here's one. I could drag a picture in there, and now it's a picture box. So the message here is that your frames are fluid. So it doesn't really matter sometimes which one you start with. Inside this tool, though, you'll also find a couple of little sliders. This little yellow box lets you round the corners out. So if you click on that, so you click once and then you get these diamonds. And if you bring those diamonds in, it rounds the corners out. So that's how to make rounded rectangles. It's a little different than how you round them in Photoshop or Illustrator XD, but it is a nice quick tool. So let's go ahead and unround them. So I just click that yellow square, and then it gives me the corner sliders to bring in. And then there's this one, which I think this is an exit point. We're not going to worry about that one. So that's how you can manipulate your frames. And after you've drawn them, you can just grab your selection tool and move it around. This particular frame has an image in it and it has a fill. So if my frame gets bigger than my image, then the yellow shows up behind it. So if we look at this sample article here, we can see this large image is its own frame. Then the design, there's a text frame for in the grain. And over here, these pink rectangles are just, I think, 4 different shapes. So if I move this one out, you'll see it's that color. And this one is actually the same color. If we look at the opacity and the properties, they're set to 54%. And that's why when they overlap each other, we get that kind of visual depth that it adds. So same thing with these ones. There's a big one and a little one. And then over here, we have frames for the headlines. We have frames for this piece of copy. They created columns by creating 2 separate frames. You can also just create columns within a frame. It's kind of user's choice. How do you zoom out of the image in the frame? That's a really good question, which I was going to talk about later, but I can give you a preview now. So let's say that my frame is this big and I only have a chunk of my image like that. The quickest way is to click on the frame, go over to properties, and find the frame fitting menu. And you'll most likely use the first one, fill frame proportionately, and it will shrink it to fill the frame. The other ones, fit content proportionally, it will shrink it to fit the entire image within there, but you'll end up with empty space. And then the other ones will stretch it out, which is horrible. Don't do that. So we will talk more about images and frames. You're absolutely welcome. Thanks for asking. But the first thing we wanted to see is just how it all comes together with these frames. And more than anything, the frames don't have a set purpose. They can be a solid color, they can be a text frame, they can be an image frame. And text frames, you grab the type tool and you draw a box. And now you have a text frame. The text I add is automatically highlighted pink. I think what Jacqueline might be it might be giving you an error, which I think it's at the bottom. You can see right here, I have a green circle that says no errors. If you click on that, it should tell you, yeah, absolutely. That's a great question because I haven't seen that, but that's another thing that InDesign helps you avoid production issues where you're using a font that is not installed. So that's just a glimpse at frames. Do we have any more questions about frames? Those were great. So the next thing I want to talk about is actually how to start bringing things in and arrange them within your design. So we're going to open the third InDesign file. You don't need to open the text doc, the import text. And I didn't mention this, but to open a file in InDesign, you can go File and Open. You can drag it to the icon on your taskbar or dock. If it's already an InDesign file, like these are, they end in INDD, then you can double click. But if you're not sure, you can always right click, Open With. All right. So here we have a resume, a sample resume. And I will say InDesign is a really pretty fun way to make a resume. It's just a better, in so many ways, it's just a much more robust word processor that you won't run into as many headaches as when you're in Microsoft Word and your images are fighting with your text because the wrapping is set wrong and things like that. So it's still fairly intuitive too. So this resume needs the work experience and the education to be added. So to add that, we're going to do what's called a place. And there's a few different ways to place something into InDesign. The traditional way is just to go File, Place, and then you find the file that you're looking for. So I have 3 import text.docx. When I do that, I have a little preview of my document. And the reason I have that is because I didn't have any frames selected. So you can place with no frame selected and you'll draw a new frame, or you can select a frame and then tell it to place it within there. So let's see here. If I click and drag a new text frame from one corner to another, it will bring in that Word document and maintain that formatting, which is nice. So you can have copy prepared and bring it into your layout afterwards. And then if we look at this, the education spot isn't next to the graduation cap. So I might double click in this and go to the E. And if I look at properties, I have this space after the paragraph, and that will let me, oh, I gotta go above, I gotta go to the end of this paragraph because that's the end of it. If I add to that, I can shift that down with precision instead of just trying to hit enter down. And there it is, experience and education. So let's do it again. This time, let's place it into an existing frame. So I'm going to click on it and delete. I'm going to grab I could use any 3 of these, right? I could grab the type tool and draw a frame or use one of the other ones. So let's just go ahead and do the type tool. Click and drag. And notice I started a little bit above my guide. So I'm going to grab my selection tool and just bring that to the little guide. InDesign has a bunch of little smart guides that show up. They're green and pink lines that tell you that you're aligned with something nearby. So if you see me go here, you'll see this green line shows up saying I'm aligned with the top of that circle, with the center, with the bottom. So really useful. All right, let's place again. So I could go file and place again, or I can just click and drag from the folder, which I closed, I guess, into there, and it'll drop it in there. It's all the same. So it's user's choice. And again, I could go click at the end of this paragraph, I double click and just add space after. It's the same rule for placing images, which we'll do a little bit later, or anything else. Are there any questions so far? And while you think of maybe some, I will say that as you start placing things into your design, you want to make sure you have really good file organization for your images, because what InDesign does with images and illustrations and graphics is it links to them. So it points to where they live on your computer and displays them in InDesign instead of making them an actual part of your project. And it does that to keep things working faster. I see I have a question. Or is that an exit?
Kind of off of that, with the font thing that happened earlier, can it make copies of the font and package that? So if you send the whole file, you can send the font?
Yes, it does. And that'll be one of the last things I show you, but you go file. Oh, where'd it go? It's something called package. I always lose it. I think it's, oh yeah, package. So when you package it, it's going to place all your fonts, all your linked files, your design files. And I think you can even add like color profiles, everything you need to get an accurate print. So that's what you send to publishers as a package. Great question. Okay, let's see what we have next. So then let's talk about threading text. It's a really, I think it's one of my favorite things that you can do. Illustrator has this as well, but let's go ahead and open up file 4, which we didn't really have to. We could have just deleted what we did in file 3. But we're going to do what's called threading text, which lets you take text that is cut off inside your frame and continue it in a different one. You might see how that would be really useful if you are doing a textbook and you place 5,000 word chapter in there, and it's just going to flow through all of your threaded text boxes instead of you having to copy and paste and clear parts and just do it the hard way. So it's actually already been placed in this document. And the reason I know I have more text than what I see is I'm going to grab my selection tool here. When I look at this about area, there's a rectangle with a red plus in it. Can everybody see that guy? Okay, and another good question, how do I add or get a different font package? Generally speaking, I think fonts are built in here. Let me see, let me go to my, sorry for the tangent, but it's a good question. If I click on my type tool and I look at my fonts here, so it says character and it's not showing me any font because I don't have any selected. But if I click here, I can do find more. And that's where you can activate any of these Adobe fonts instantly. You can also just go to fonts.adobe.com and add any fonts you want, and it'll synchronize with your Creative Cloud applications, which is really, really nice. So that's for, well, that's for Adobe fonts. Otherwise, you just have to download them and install them into your system, and then InDesign will recognize them. But so fonts.adobe.com, you can go and search recommendations. Let's just see. And if I want, maybe I really like Molto, I just have to activate 9 fonts. That means it has different styles as well. If I were to go to InDesign now, hopefully, I would be able to find Molto. Yep, there it is. So I think that's one of my favorite things about Adobe in general is how easy it is to manage your fonts now. Because it can be really frustrating to have something in a font that you had on one computer and it's not on the other one. All right, back to, hopefully that helps. If not, we can talk more at the end. Back to threading text now. So I have this square with a red plus in it. If I click that, I get that similar place dialog from when I placed the Word document without a box, a frame. So then I just draw a new frame. And what you can do is draw one frame. And then let's go ahead and shrink it so it cuts off at education. And then I still have a plus. It's saying, hey, there's still more text. So I click it again. And this one, I'll draw education. And you can see my thread guides are saying it's going from contact to experience to education. So you could continue to thread a very large Word document with only having placed it once, which I think is really fun. Any questions about threading text? And if you got them, just ask when you've got them. Now let's talk about adding pictures, images. Are there no images on this one? Okay, let's go for it. So first, let's add a jellyfish here. And there's no frame or anything, but similar to how I placed that Word doc, I can go File and Place. And inside the folder called Links are the pictures. So here's a jellyfish. And I'll click Open. And then I can click and draw a box for the jellyfish. And then I can shrink the box down so that it's just inside there. And then that's where I can use the frame fitting options. I can fill it proportionately. You can also try what's called content aware fit, where it will try and decide what makes the most sense for that image. And that frame can be adjusted anytime. All right, the next one is a lionfish, which I think last time I did this, I realized the assets were named wrong. It says sea lion, but that's a lionfish. I should have renamed it. So I can select this frame that I've already drawn. I can go File and Place, and I can choose the sea lion, and it'll put it in there. Now we've got the octopus. Let's draw a frame again. This time I'll drag and drop into it just to keep things interesting. I don't think I have an octopus. Sad. All right, maybe that's as far as we'll take it then. Let's put the sea turtle in there. Sea turtle. So that dropped the sea turtle in there, and back to the selection tool. Right now it is fitting proportionately. So I could also say fill proportionately. I could also, let's say if we fit it, oh no, that's the worst. There we go, fit proportionately. I can do content aware fit, and it didn't do a good job, but usually it does a really good job with people. It will try and center people. But if you want to do it without any of those buttons, that's where you grab your selection tool. And if you, I'm going to click in this gray area. If you click on the image, you'll get a blue box, and what you've actually clicked on is the frame. So with this, I can adjust the frame and change the crop of the image. If I want to change where the image is inside the crop, that's what this little target is. So when you click that, you now have a brown frame, and the brown frame is how you adjust the image. Take note, if you resize that brown frame, you can squash your picture. So make sure you hold Shift while dragging that around. You can also now just move the image inside the frame. Are there any questions about adding images? So, I could use an ellipse tool and put an image inside a circle too. And I can just drag and drop like I did last time. Let's put the berries in there. Ooh, beautiful. And fit proportionately. Okay, let's see what's next. So we're gonna spend a tiny bit of time transforming these graphics, which we saw in a moment ago. But in this design, they want the jellyfish to be this entire top part. If I don't want it to bleed to the edge, I could grab my selection tool, and I can still grab that frame and resize it to fit within the columns. And then I could click on the target and move the jellyfish around if I wanted to, or I could try some of my frame fitting buttons. The lionfish has the same issue. It's not really in there very well. So again, I could click the target and just shrink it down while holding Shift. Or I could click on it and tell it to fill proportionately. And then same thing, we move the turtle over, we can bring this bigger and fill proportionately. And that's really, I think, what I noticed. I used to teach yearbook, and we used InDesign, and I think what students had the hardest time navigating image frames with images in them. So take some time to practice getting things how you like. Once you get it, you get it. But it does take a little bit of practice. It's a little different than how we're used to managing images because they're inside a frame. All right. Let's talk about text wrap. So InDesign has really powerful wrapping features, which just define how text will be affected by other elements. So in this case, the text wraps inside the box, meaning it says, go down to the next line. You live in this box. If I wanted the text to wrap around this wave picture, I can click on it with the selection tool, and I can see text wrap right here in the properties, and I can choose wrap around the bounding box, and then it pushes the text away from it. Underneath there, I can control the padding. I'm not sure that's the right word. I always forget. Offset for how close the text can get to the element. So I could scooch it away from there a little bit too. And you can see it's got a little padding around it. That's why it's got an offset. And you can start to get a little bit designy if you want. So if I wanted this wave box to actually have a diagonal across it, I could grab my direct selection tool, click on the corner of the box. Let me zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. So when you click on it, it shows you everything, but if you hover towards the box, you can click on the corner and you can actually grab that corner. Wait, let me have it. And change the shape of, I changed the shape of the frame. I have to do it again. I'm not sure why I had to do it for two of them. But, and you might have noticed instead of trying to click it, I just did a click and drag on it. I think I have a screen that's big that gets weird when I'm on Zoom. But I can change the frame and that'll change the crop and it'll also change the wrapping. And same thing, it's a little bit too close. I can push it away. Let's grab the selection tool. I can adjust, oh, I can't adjust the offset on this one. So maybe that's why. Interesting. We ended up with a few boxes. But you can use the selection tool, the direct selection tool, to modify your frames is, I think, the exciting piece of the tool here. Wrapping will also, let's say we put a picture frame right in the middle here. Let's just circle. I can give it the wrapping and it will push the text away from it. And you can really control how it does it. It can create an entire line break. It can shoot it to the next column or page. And you can actually invert it, which would make the text live inside of the frame that you did too. If you're curious about doing wrapping, text wrapping, there's a lot of really good information on the Adobe website that helps you kind of learn it. But this is another way that you can quickly build out a complete publication, if you will. Something else I'd like to mention, if for some reason you're worried about your files being linked and you just want them to actually be embedded in your project, you can click on an image frame and in the properties at the quick actions, there's an embed button. Now, the trade-off is you get a bigger file that might slow your computer down more, but you don't have to worry about losing something. And it looks like I have an error here. I don't know what. Hover. Okay, Zoom doesn't like my mouse thing, so I'll figure it out later. The error could be the font. It could be that I have cut off text. Let's thread this. Nope, it's not. Oh yeah, it is. Yeah. Oh, it's still saying that. Sorry, I just want to make sure we don't have. I think it might be because I still have cut off text. I'm not sure what that text off the panel. I think it's something to do with the incomplete text in there. Oh. Yeah, so the image in the middle was pushing a bunch of text off of it and causing an error. Thanks, Delaney. Okay, so the last thing we'll talk about is sharing and saving your project. Let's see here. Yeah. So let's say this is ready for review. InDesign has a really nice collaboration feature that is now in Photoshop and Illustrator too. So if I want to send this an easy to view version of this, somebody can comment on, I can actually click this share button and I can go to share for review. It'll ask you to choose a title. And what it's doing is it's uploading an online hosted version of this that I'm going to let anybody with the link view. So if I copy this link and put it in the chat, you can check out my jellyfish. Let's see here. And you can leave comments. You can draw and put a comment on the pin. So this is a really nice tool if you have somebody making something for you or you're making something for someone else and you want feedback to know what revisions you need. So I could circle, I could just, let's put it, yeah, let's draw a circle. Oh, I guess I highlighted, and I could say center text, please. And these comments will be, anybody can view and see what I highlighted here. You can put a pin and say, wow, cool jellyfish. I guess not all comments have to be useful, right? But so this will be something that you can update the link on and have different revisions. If you want to save a PDF that you can easily email, you go to the same share button and you go quick export as PDF. You can choose that you want to print it or you want to email it. Smallest file size are the two. I'm not sure what this last one is, but that's okay. So that's how you can get a PDF. Let's do high quality print. It'll ask you where. Preview jellies. It's just going to go on my desktop. It'll bring additional PDF options up if you like to go and customize your PDF. And then you will have a finished version. And you might notice a pin showed up in InDesign as well, because you can see comments in the program as well as in the link, which is nice. Desktop, preview, jellies, there's a finished PDF. Another thing I really like is you can just publish it online. So say you don't want to email people attachments, you just want people to be able to see it, you don't need them to comment. It'll create a link. Yeah, it'll create a link that will just display your finished file. So Jacqueline said, people reviewing it don't need InDesign, right? And that's absolutely right. All they need is a web browser. So that's what I really like about it is they can see it, they can comment on it. They don't have to open it or anything like that. It's super cool. And then if you're just want to export in a different way, there you can choose different formats that you can use. And then finally, you have package, which is your file that you send to your publisher. And InDesign isn't just for print, but traditionally it was, and it was a really great tool for creating these products that would be printed out and eliminating potential issues between you and the printer. So that's where package is. And that's our general view of InDesign. I didn't talk a lot about editing text or anything like that. It's very similar to Microsoft Word, but it can do even more. There's more things like you can create styles that it'll be a set font, a set font size, certain offset settings, anything like that. And then you can apply them to multiple text frames so that all your title boxes have the same formatting off the bat. So there's some really powerful stuff. So text styles, paragraph styles, you can really manipulate wrapping a lot more, and you can integrate Illustrator files, Photoshop files, anything that is out there. InDesign tends to be able to handle it. So as somebody who learned Photoshop and Illustrator first, I was pretty apprehensive about this tool. I was like, I don't need it, but I'll use it. I made a resume on it. I make training materials on it, things that are going to be PDFs that we share around. And I make quick little announcements sometimes too, but I'm all over the place. I'll use Express and Illustrator and Photoshop and all that good stuff. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this piqued your interest. I do want to say, I'll put my email in here. If you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out, adobe@arizona.edu. And the rest of the time is for questions or for you to go on with your day, whatever you like. I'll be here.